For those of you who don't know me, I'm Laurel. I work for LinkedIn. Actually recently joined from Microsoft, so in July. And now I work on the employee communications team. And I'm actually in one of LinkedIn's first fully remote roles. So it gives me this kind of unique perspective because prior to the pandemic, LinkedIn was about 95% in person. So to be able to be somebody who is working remotely and then working in a communications role, and a lot of the work that I do is really focused on enabling communicators to just become better at what they do, and then within that, helping employees also just work better, smarter, more engaged, all of that. One of the things that I've noticed since starting, and even in my previous role working at Microsoft, where I was really working with a lot of different customers, because I worked as a customer success manager in modern work, there's a lot of things that and transformations that are happening in the workplace, even outside of what's happening in with everything that's happened in the last 18 months with the pandemic. Technology and people have changed a lot. And I think that gets into some of the authenticity that we were talking about earlier, just before I started this presentation. There's just a lot that's happening. So when we think about what is going on in the workplace, we have a world where everyone is becoming networked, right? When we look at technology, when we look at how people are connecting with one another, how they're looking into more of that social aspect, what Yammer brings for people, what tools like LinkedIn bring for people in the outside of work space, right? We have this growth in collective intelligence. When I first started working in corporate America, we were looking at knowledge management as more of like, how do we organize files, right? Like, how do we organize the things and stuff that everybody is working on from a day to day? And now we've moved into this space where I've heard people say many times that when you look at a news article or you look at the post, like the real gems are actually in the comments, right? That's where you get the good stuff. And so now the collective intelligence and the knowledge management that we're working on is actually in the engagement on the post, right? On the news, on the story that we're putting out there. So how do we harness that? And then at the same time, how do we remove some of the stigma that comes along with social media? There's so much fear out there of like the employee that does wrong or the data that's shared in weird spaces. And so how do we get people comfortable with that social network within the workplace? So all of this is changing and it's all really great and everybody recognizes it and we're all crowdsourcing stuff in our day-to-day life. But then when I go talk to people, especially jumping into LinkedIn, right? What I noticed was that most of the communicators that I talk to hold traditional values. And this is no offense to my LinkedIn comms team, like this is totally us. So, you know, we send pretty much everything via email. We love email, right? It's a great way to just like get stuff out there. I call it random acts of communication. So like, it doesn't matter. We think you need it and we're not really sure what distribution list you're on, but you're probably on one of them. So we'll probably just send it out. And then as we start to get like creative in how we're working, we'll like put a video in the email. Like, ooh, we're really catering to the Gen Zs. They love videos and all that TikTok stuff. It's really stepping up our level. And then people are like, podcasts, like, let's definitely do podcasts because everyone wants to listen to leadership talk for an hour. Like if I'm on my commute, which I don't have anymore because I'm remote, I definitely want to listen to my CEO talk about something. And then finally, like when we're looking at chasing the same problems over and over and over again. So I've been working in communications for almost 15 years. And when I started, we were like, the internet, like the internet's going to save us all. We're going to have this single source of truth. We're going to put all the things and stuff. Everyone's going to love it. They're all going to be informed. They're going to know everything that's going on. And like, Fast forward, right? I'm sure this was even happening before I entered the workplace. Fast forward, we still have that ask, right? I'm still getting the ask of like, create the portal that'll solve all our problems. And listen, right? We're all smart. There's genius within so many different companies, right? Like if Microsoft and Google and LinkedIn and all of the great companies that I've worked with haven't figured out a single source of truth portal, like maybe it's not an actual thing. And so when I'm looking at traditional values of communicators, what we really need to focus on is how we're working with our audiences, right? And the way that the modern workplace has influenced our people, right? And the employees that we need to communicate with. So if we're looking at like, this is super high level. I got 15 minutes, y'all, so bear with me. So when I look at like, how do we need to shift to really communicate? And I'm sure you've heard this before, but really putting people at the center, and that's like what Viva and the employee experience is all about, is like, how do we center in on those people? And then within that, how do we take into account remote and hybrid work and make sure that we're creating inclusive experiences that are equitable for those people? How are we looking at technology and the way that technology is influencing people and kind of driving people in their day-to-day work? And then what is the role that communicators actually play in navigating all of these new things? So when I look at people, right, our audience as communicators, we have a multi-generational workforce. We have, I think, about 5 generations in the workforce right now, which is not something that we've really seen historically. So, you have the boomers, you have the Gen Zs, and you have everybody in between. We're really looking at in working in a remote space, right? Like when I go to work, because I'm just moving from one room to another, the things that come up in my day are entirely different than when I go into an office. So if I'm going to go to an office, like I have very intentional and different distractions that might happen. Here at home, someone rings my doorbell, or I get a call from school and I just pick up and go for my kids. Like there's a whole bunch of different things that are happening when it comes to how we're focusing on and the attention that we have. We also have these new creator communities, and we have people who really want to be putting content out there, right? So it's not just about me receiving news, it's about I want to create it and I want to socialize, I want to get it out there. And then we still have those people who are traditional, right? Who love newsletters and love going to that portal that's going to save us all. And then we have people who are actually like me, and I like self-service, right? Like I create content sometime, and I like to get news, but I also like to say, hey, this is what I want to hear about, and this is the kind of stuff I don't, right? So I can go in and pick and choose that kind of stuff. So we're thinking about like behaviors and the mindsets that are happening as we look at people and the way that they're shifting. We have this opportunity to look at our audiences and our employees as like they're really opting in to do things, right? And so they're saying, hey, I want to participate in this project, or I want to attend this town hall. And they have the opportunity. So it's shifting from like, I have to go do this, and this is a task that's been assigned to me, to I get to do it, right? This is a cool opportunity. And I'm being inspired by this community that I'm seeing in these digital spaces. And then we're also, because we're looking at network communities and social and working out loud, so having the ability to share content early and connect with one another, we care about that. And we're really in service to everybody else. So if I'm looking at being a creator, I want to make sure my content's good for people and that people want it, and that those people who want to self-service opt into my stuff. And that as traditional people are getting news in the traditional formats, that you're getting the opportunity to elevate that content that might be produced by a creator. I got 5 minutes, so I'm being mindful. The other thing that I've been seeing a lot is just technology evolution. And then for communicators, it's been difficult to really understand how technology influences everything that they do, right? And I've been talking at some conferences, and there's still so many people who are on-prem SharePoint or Exchange, and so they haven't even realized the influence of the cloud and the way that data is connected there and accessible on any device, anytime, anywhere. There's also AI, and AI has been talked about for a while, but in the context of how communicators work, so much is being done by AI now that like I don't have to push communications out as much or at all in some spaces because it is being surfaced through AI automatically based on who I am and what I do. So there's this major shift that's happening because we have this access to things, because things are in the cloud and they're networked and crowdsourced and everything that we talked about with the people. All of those things are happening, so knowledge is available in spaces where it previously wasn't. And then because we have these new devices, right? When I entered the workforce, and I mean, this dates me, but I know there's people who enter the workforce and we didn't even have laptops. You know, there were no smartphones, right? And so for me, the ability to have the apps on my phone to answer emails wherever I am, and for the generations who are coming into the workplace after me, they have this expectation of being able to access things on mobile through apps at any time. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily working all the time. It just means that they're working in ways that we previously couldn't or didn't. So when we think about really, how does that impact communicators, right? We have to take a look at how we're connecting the stories behind the scenes. As we try to harness the collective knowledge of those creators, right? Those people who want to go out there and share their own content, and you find really good stuff, and maybe it's leaders, maybe it's employees, maybe it's somewhere in between, right? And for me as a communicator, I want to find that. I want to elevate it, and I want to say, look at this good stuff because it is authentic, right? At LinkedIn, we have a whole initiative right now built around creator communities and how we can continue to drive thought leadership through creators. And that is absolutely something that you can replicate internally at your company, and especially using a tool like Yammer. And part of that is just letting go, right? If you're looking at hierarchical communications that you're pushing out through email, and now we can harness the powers of the creators and that community to connect content, to share it, because if it's coming from corp comms, it doesn't have that authenticity. As a salesperson, when my manager sent an email, I prioritize that, or he messaged me, or he pointed me to content, I prioritize that message. And for somebody coming from communications, it just fell to the side, right? So the more that we can enable people to do that kind of thing, the better off we'll be. And that means we have to trust them. We have to really trust that they're going to make the right choices and that they're going to focus on engagement, and that we'll have that opportunity to do spontaneous collaboration. And when we're looking at things like Viva, and I know there's conversations happening later, like you really have to understand when AI is going to shift communications and when you can surface stuff without doing a ton of work. And that's really at LinkedIn how we're looking at using Viva Connections and the rest of the Viva suite is I don't want to have to manage a whole bunch of content with points of contacts all over the world, right? I want to be able to have that content just pulled up because it exists somewhere else. So I'm just going to surface it. And that fundamentally changes how communicators are working with one another. And I know I'm at time, so I'm going to just end right there. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a lot of content in 15 minutes. So feel free to connect with me and talk to me. Yeah, I'm happy to continue conversations.